Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Larry Singleton. As she said, I'm the new dean. I've been here, this is my fourth week at PACE. I'm not sure how much longer I can consider myself to be a rookie. I think people are kind of considering me almost to be a veteran at this point. I've learned a lot, but I have a lot more to learn about what a great institution both the university and the Lubin School are. I'm sorry that because of the virus, I haven't had a chance to meet many of the students yet, but I really look forward to doing that via Zoom meetings whenever possible, certainly in person when we're all back on the ground more, which hopefully will start next semester in a lot more regularity than it is now. I've known about PACE for many years and been attracted to it for many years. I'm really honored to have been chosen to be the next dean. I look forward to meeting with you and to working with you and to helping you be successful while you're a student here and for whatever comes after that. This is my first Dean's Roundtable, and I think this is a great thing, a great program that was started, I think, by my predecessor, Dean Berman. I think it's a great way to feature people, especially like our guest today, who is really a giant. You know, I often think of this as you attending the Lubin School, you're really standing on the shoulders of giants of people who came before you. And that's certainly the case with our guest today. His name is Richard Pustorino. He earned his BBA in finance on the Pleasantville campus of Pace University in 1986. He also earned an MBA in financial management on the New York City campus in 1996. He went on to decades-long Wall Street careers in finance with Morgan Stanley, Neuberger, Berman, and Credit Suisse. In his retirement, which I think he's flunked his retirement, he serves as a senior advisor for the IC Research Institute, which is a database that provides industry professionals with a lot of relevant information to help them be successful. But probably most important, and I think one of the really great things about him being with us here today is it really paces in his family's blood. His dad was a decades-long accounting professor at PACE. He and his two sisters attended PACE, and he met his wife at PACE. So it really is a family affair at PACE University. So really, really honored to have him here. I've known Mr. Pustorino for several years. I met him in a previous role that I had. It's really wonderful for me to be able to reconnect with him today. I'd like to welcome him to this Dean's Roundtable and invite him to say a few words about himself before we open up the floor for questions. Rich?
Well, thank you, Dean. It's special for me to present in front of you and the students sitting on the other side of this computer back in the day, so I know what it's about. I've had a great run with PACE, as Larry mentioned. I met my wife there, had 3 children there. I got a great education from PACE University, an education that served me well throughout my career. Having professors with practical knowledge, having worked in the fields that I was going to pursue my career in was invaluable to me. The counsel that you get from your professors when you talk to them at their office hours is invaluable, and I would impress on all of you to please do that. Take advantage of the opportunity that you have. You know, life is about perspective, and the perspective that you take every day when you go to class. I want you to think about something. I want you to think about either you or somebody that loves you a lot is paying a lot of money for you to get an education. When you sit in front of your professor in your class, if you think about that professor works for me, PACE University works for me, it changes your mindset in terms of what you expect to get out of that proposition. You should expect to get the most for your money out of that opportunity. So if you go into class every day with that, then you will be a little more attentive. You'll sit up a little straighter in class. You'll listen. And then after class, you will then pursue all the other outlets that PACE has. So I implore you to think about that. When you go through your daily routine, think about what else can I do to make myself better. So with that, I did spend 30 years on Wall Street, and a lot of you are going through this as you prepare yourselves to go into the real world, as we say. How do I get there? What do I do when I get there? What skills do I need? Well, you need the basic, the education that you're getting right now. The real world experience comes from doing. And I spent a career doing. So one of the most important things you need to do is reflect on where you were, and then you have to decide where you want to go, right? We all know about this, setting goals, reevaluating, thinking about where I want to go next. Constantly do that. Constantly reevaluate where you are going. That's a benefit because that'll make you make decisions about your career choices, where you want to go to work. So how do you get that job? This is something you're not taught in school. The interview process. Now, we've all known about the interview process. We get nervous about the interview process. We think about it. We overthink it. What do you do when you get an interview? Your generation, if you will, are facing hurdles that I didn't have to face. You are now doing Zoom meetings. You are doing phone interviews. You are putting your resumes on industry web systems where there are algorithms out there that will look at your resume and pick particular words in order to put you forward. So when you think about putting together your resume, you have to tell a story about yourself. There have to be critical things in that resume that catches somebody's eye. We'll go into that a little further when I talk about the interview process. What's important to me when I was looking for a new job was, how do I get it? Well, back then, in 1986, Wall Street was a place where everybody wanted to go to work. Jobs were tough to come by. We didn't have the internet. We didn't have the ability to download information. I had to take the New York Times out and read through the New York Times, the want ads. I have to get an envelope, put my resume in an envelope. I have to put a stamp on that, and then I have to mail it. You don't have to do that. So you are so much further ahead of what we had to all go through. So you have technology. Technology is your friend. Technology is not my friend. I had to learn how to do a lot of these things that you do. And that comes to communication. We all love to text now. We all love to email now. What's interesting, what's one of the most key factors that I found invaluable is FaceTime. Read somebody's face. Read the room. These are important things that you don't learn in school. What does that mean? It means when you're in an interview and you're sitting across from somebody and they're asking you questions, you're trying to determine for yourself, do I want to work there? What's interesting about this place? What do I need to tell them about myself? You can pick up cues from the person sitting across from you. If the person is sitting like this, or they're sitting like this, or they're sitting like this, those are the three key things that you've all seen in your life. Those three monkeys: see no evil, hear no evil, speak no evil. These are the nonverbal cues that you need to get yourself familiar to. I think something like 90% of communication is nonverbal. I was a salesman for most of my career. Picking up nonverbal cues was invaluable to me. I would be in a meeting across the table from somebody. I have a pitch book, going through the pitch book. I would start to notice that they would close the pitch book. They would start to lean back in their chairs. I said, wow, this person's not interested in anything that I'm saying. What do I have to do to grab that person's attention? You have to pick up on these nonverbal cues. That is an important part of being a human being, is communication. I'll give you an example of where the generational differences between yourselves and me is you like to text, you like to IM, you like to email. I ran teams of 10 to 20 people. I came into my office one day and there was an individual sitting no more than 10 feet from me who had sent me 10 IMs. I didn't get to them. I didn't listen to them. I didn't read them. I didn't look at them. Later in the day, she sends me 10 more. Finally, I call her into my office. I say, what can I do for you? She says, well, you haven't gotten back to me on those IMs I sent you. And I said, well, I like to communicate face to face. I like to see what you have to say. I like to understand what you're saying to me. I said, and also it's a quicker way to communicate. We can resolve things quicker in a more efficient manner. I said, next time you have to get something from someone in a different department, go down and talk to them. It's hard for people to say no to you when you're in face-to-face, when you're right next to them. In an email, I can brush you off all day long. So communication is very important to your life skills, if you will. So if you think about that, what makes me different from other people in the work environment? Well, that will become to your ethics, how hard you work. Am I a professional? Am I an adult? When I hire people, when I interview somebody, I can tell within the first 5 minutes of a conversation with them if I'm going to hire them. How do I do that? I read the room. I read their faces. I see how they present themselves when they walk in. One of the biggest things is when you're trying to sell yourself in an interview, you need to have 3 to 5 things that are important about yourself in your life, in your work experience. What makes you different and unique? How are you going to add value to the individual that wants to hire you? That is the important part of an interview process. You need to develop a dialogue with that other person. You need to probe them with questions to find out what's on their mind. What are they looking for? That's a life skill that you learn over time. And I found that to be very invaluable. Second, communication leads to networking. How do I build a network? You've kind of seen this a little bit today. I met the dean several years ago at Marist. He's somebody that I spent a lot of time with at Marist. Now, lo and behold, he's in front of me again. You never know where you're going to go in life. You never know who's important to you in life. When I was working, I had a network of competitors. I would go to industry conferences. I would sit down and talk to people. I would see them quite often. They became friends of mine. I would call them up and say, hey, what do you know about X? What do you know about Y? I'm having difficulty getting in to see so-and-so. Can you help me? That's the value of a network. You have internal networks and you have external networks. Internal networks are equally as important for you, for your personal growth. Developing those relationships with people who are providing you data or you're providing data to is invaluable to you getting your job done. So think about every opportunity you get to meet somebody, cultivate that relationship. Stop by, have a cup of coffee with them. Talk to them about sports or something of interest. That's important when you get into the work environment. Most of you are going to be faced with the following scenario, and I was faced with this myself. About 5 years into your work experience, you're going to hit what I call the 5-year syndrome. The 5-year syndrome is this. I've been working for a while. I kind of know what I'm doing. I'm unhappy. I'm having an argument with this person on my team. I'm not getting promoted. I'm not getting the salary that I expect to get. You start to think about the negativities as opposed to what's positive. How did I get to where I was? What did I achieve to get to this point? How am I going to go to the next level? Again, it's perspective. If you flip your mindset, good things will happen to you over time. Treat contacts, anybody that you come into contact with, be it a vendor, a client, somebody who needs to provide you with data, treat them as a client. Again, this is about perspective. If you treat someone as a client, you expect to do your best job for that person. Why? Because clients are in charge of revenue. Revenue is what pays your salary. If you treat individuals that way, you will give them your best, and then they will give you their best. Again, it's about perspective. These are things that you're not taught. These are things you have to learn over time. The other thing that's important, and this is a lesson that I learned when I was working at Neuberger Berman. I used to support 3 people, 3 marketers who went out in the world and sold. and were responsible for revenue. And we had an analytical role where we had to go in and provide data and provide information on competitors. This one individual was never satisfied with what we did. I was very task-oriented. He told me to do something, I did it well, and I did it on time, and I handed it to him. He would later come back and say, well, what else? What else did you put in here? Where is the value added? Did you provide value added? It took me some time to realize that he was correct. I was only doing the minimal amount of work. What you need to do is add value. That's how you expand your realm. That's how you grow. You add value. I started to develop monthly and quarterly reports that I would then share with people. People then were looking for that information. People said, oh, this is great, a great resource. I never knew we had that. That led to a promotion. That's how you move along the cycle. You add value. Always constantly keep moving forward. Very important. Over my time, I was a builder of teams and a manager of teams. Managing people is a very interesting perspective. Sometimes you herd cats. Sometimes you babysit. Sometimes you're a dictator. The one that I like the most is a mentor and a champion. A mentor and a champion of the people that are on your team. How do I help them grow? What do I need to do as a boss to make sure that they are on the right path? And I will tell you that takes many forms. Being in sales is quite interesting. I would torture the people on my team who were new to sales. I would literally have them call me and I would hang up on them. I would have them call me and I would be very difficult in the questions that I would ask them. Really esoteric questions, because I wanted to see how they could think on their feet. It's a brutal training, but it was a training that was worthwhile. And everyone that I have given that training to has turned out to be very good salespeople because they can act and think on their feet. And they have seen enough things thrown at them that they can work through it. I mean, think of this one thing. On an interview, I was asked this question once. If you were a tree, what kind of tree would you be? There's no right answer to that question. It's just how you answer that question that makes sense. I happen to be a willow tree. Why? Because I provided shade and I was bendable and flexible. I could have been a redwood. I could have been an oak. I don't know. But that's what you have to think about. How can I think on my feet and act? Very important. One of the biggest things also that I see generally in people that are on my team that are young to the business is don't be a cancer. That is probably one of the biggest things you need to guard out against. What does that mean? It means when things aren't going well, when you're unhappy, don't be the person that sits around and says things about other people or other things, or that the firm's not doing this, or my boss can't do this, or I can do a better job than that. It becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. You have enough negativity, then the outcome will be negative. What you should be doing at that point is saying, what can I do differently? How can I challenge myself to get out of this situation and do something else? Is it get another job? Is it break down these things that are causing me problems? That's where you find yourself. Very important to think about that. Don't be a cancer. As a salesman, and in this presentation, as you can see, people love to talk about themselves. I can talk about myself forever. Shut up and listen. That is something that you have to think about quite often. If you be quiet and listen to what people say, digest that information, it's a very powerful thing to do. So one of the last things that I tell people on my team, and I actually tell my children this as well, if you don't ask, you don't get. Think about that. If you don't ask, you don't get. That's in every aspect of your life. If you don't ask for help in class from the professor, you're not going to get help. If you don't ask for that raise, ask for that promotion, ask to be on that special project, you won't get. So make sure that you understand where you are and ask questions. One of the things my mentor taught me about going to work every day was this: be an adult, be a professional, work hard, have some fun, and make a good living. If you can do that, you have a very good career in front of you. So with that, those are some of the highlights of things that I wanted to talk about, and I'd be delighted to take any of your questions.
Thank you. That's wonderful. Your remarks were, I'm sure, well received by everyone on this call, and certainly by me. I would like to open the floor up to questions, but let me just start by asking one of my own, if I could. You had a lot of really interesting roles. You said primarily in sales, but did you have a favorite role that you had, or a favorite firm that you worked for, and why? What helped people differentiate?
I really enjoyed my time at Neuberger Berman. That was the job where I switched from being a task-oriented individual to getting into sales. An interesting story there about my career there. I was in a project management role there. And project management in a large firm is usually a dumping ground. That's for all the projects that people don't know where they go. They go to project management. And so I was tasked with all these outside vendors that had analytical systems. And one of them was Salomon Brothers bond trading system, highly technical system. And it came in, not to the fixed income team where it should have went, it came to project management. So I was working on it. We had a couple of clients that needed to use it, and I became the expert, if you will. And one day I got a phone call from my boss saying, you have to go to a meeting. The meeting's going to be at Salomon Brothers. Now I'll paint the picture for you. Salomon Brothers at the time was the king of bonds, bond trading. We were going to have the meeting on their bond trading floor, which was this tremendous conference room, which was in a U shape, overlooking the trading floor. So I was going to go with the head of partner and head of fixed income, partner and head of institutional distribution, partner, head of operations, my boss, and me. And I thought, great, I'm just carrying the books to the presentation, and that'll be the end of my role. Go in, sitting around the horseshoe is about 25, 30 people. Conversation starts going. Bond guys start talking about bond stuff. And then all of a sudden a question is asked about yield book. And the heads just kept turning down the line, and they ended up on me. And I was the most junior person in the room. And that was my sink or swim moment. And I swam, I guess, well enough that at the end of the meeting when we left, I noticed the two partners talking to each other and pointing at me as we were walking to the subway. I got back to my office. The head of distribution walked into my office and said, you're no longer going to be working in project management. I want you to work on my team. That was the start of my, I guess, rise in terms of working on sales. And I will tell you something. The title of what I did was called Consultant Relations. And I guarantee nobody has heard of what Consultant Relations is. Most made up title ever. But it was a career that was very good to me. My head of institutional walked over to me and said, there are these things called consultants that are out there. They're becoming relevant in asset management. You're kind of an analytical guy. Go out there and talk to them. I said, what do you mean go out there and talk to them? Because they're all across the country. Go visit them and see what they're about. I had to formulate a business plan. I had to formulate a process and a philosophy, and I had to make it work. And over time I did.
Sounds great. Really, really interesting stories. Yeah. I'd like to open the floor up for any questions from any students in the Zoom.
Hi, my name is Daniel. I have a quick question. How did you become interested in a financial related career, and what was your first finance or business related experience or internship?
Great question. Thank you, Daniel. So I started very young. My father got me involved in the stock market. So he bought me a couple of shares of a few companies, and I watched it and I got interested in it. I went to Pace, which was known for being a great accounting and business school. And I said, yeah, I think finance is interesting. The interesting thing about going to Wall Street was my father had an accounting practice. I could have easily transitioned into that. but I learned quickly that I didn't like filling out little boxes with numbers, and I decided finance would be more interesting. And so my first job out of college was with a firm called Donaldson, Lufkin and Jenrette, and it was in their Pershing division, which was a clearing operation. So I took the job in there where you were going to rotate through a lot of the operational departments. And that really gave me a ground floor look of what happens after a trade is executed. And from there, I progressed from that to the mid office, where what happens when you trade, and then to the front office, which was sales.
Very good. Yeah.
Thank you.
Aaron.
Thank you. I think sort of your experience going from technical to sales to now sort of a research-based advisory, you're a good person to ask this. What sort of role do you think a behavioral approach, especially to, you know, valuations and consulting, but really finance in general, plays now in a time where everything is digital, everything is like analytics based? Where does behavioral finance fall into that?
There are asset management firms out there that have their whole practice based on behavioral management. I think the name of one of them is Kanashak. Their whole thing is based on psychology and looking at the market and not gaming the market, but understanding what makes people buy Tesla. Why are you gambling on Tesla as it keeps going up? So they do a lot of analytical work on that. So there is a place for that for sure in terms of what's going on. And actually, if you look at the market today, there is that lot of that herd mentality, which does go to psychology. Absolutely.
Stephen, I think you had your hand up.
Thank you. So my question would be, you know, you would say, if you don't ask, you don't get. So my question would be, is there a best way, like a best practice? How do you ask? How do you frame it? How do you do it?
Great question.
The best way to do it?
Yes. So particularly with most important part of your job, raises and bonuses, right? And promotions. So the wrong time to do it is the time when you're doing your year-end review. The time to do it is a couple of weeks before that, a couple of months before that. Start to go through what you've accomplished in the year. Think about those things. Think about every project you worked on, every client you helped, all the positives that you add to your team and to your job. List them. I will tell you, if you write it down on paper and then you email it to your boss, he has to read it. Then you go in and you say, listen, I've been here for such and such a time. I've done this, I've done that. I'm looking to do more. I wish to be involved in more projects. So you have to have that conversation. And that's what the quote means. It means have that conversation. Figure out a way to sell yourself, because that's what you're doing. You're selling yourself to your boss. Does that answer your question?
Yes, thank you.
Does anybody else have their hand up? I don't see anyone, but I can't see it.
I did get a private message. Let me read it.
Please.
What are some of the motivating factors you had during your professional and academic career that kept you driving forward and striving for success?
I always had a game plan from the beginning, is to how do I move from point A to point B? And then I looked at people around me that were being successful and how did they get to where they were. So motivating factors were, you know, I had people relying on me, right? I got married, I had kids. Those were factors that I always brought with me to work, is how do I provide for them? What do I need to do to get better? It goes back to that value added statement that I made. I was always looking to add value to everything that I did. I was always trying to work outside my comfort zone. When I would commute back and forth from Long Island to the city, on the train, I would take industry information and I would read it. I would try to understand what people were doing. So always try to keep the momentum going. When you are vying for a promotion or trying to get a special project, you have to have the skill sets, right? It goes to communication. It goes to talking to the people that are influencing your career. You need to be in front of them. You need to ask the questions. I can't tell you how important communication is to everything that you do in your career. You cannot sit back and wait for things to happen. You have to make things happen. The reason why is because the only person that really cares about you is you. You have to make things happen. If you keep that, you reassess your goals, you will move forward. I went back and got my MBA because I saw that I needed to get my MBA. That was important. I saw that I needed to get registered as a broker and get all these other licenses that I needed. So I went after those and I got those. That's what you have to do. You have to keep growing.
I believe Erin had a question.
Yes, thank you. Can you hear me okay, Juliana?
Mhm.
Okay, thanks. Well, thank you very much, first of all, for hosting us and for this very informative session today. Erica, Ileana, Dean Singleton, thanks for hosting us. So my question involves interviewing. You mentioned before about interviewing and also your skill set. I'm changing careers a little bit later in life, and what I would like to know is when I'm interviewing, how can I differentiate myself among 100 or 200 other candidates with similar education and background than myself?
It's a good question. So it goes back to your story, not knowing your story, but knowing yourself, knowing your story. The nonverbal cues in an interview are so important because you need to extract from that individual, are they paying attention to me in that interview? Am I, in a conversation, am I asking that individual a question that then I can take and craft my story to, right? This is the art part of when you're in a discussion with somebody. You have to have a leading question that will extract something from that person across the table from you. Once you get that answer, you need to process that answer and then tie it to your background. You then have a similarity to that other individual, right? Most people want to work with people that they want to have a beer with. That's the fact of life. And I will tell you stories about when I would hire people on my team. I would get, for an open spot, we would get 100 resumes that would come into HR, okay? HR would screen them down to about 40. I would get them, and then I would put them out to my team, 2 to 3 people on my team. I'd say, you're going to do the first screening of these things, and then you're going to bring them to me. When I walk into a room and sit down with somebody to talk to them, I'm not kidding you, within 5 minutes, I can tell if I want to work with that person. Why? I want to know that you're not going to disrupt the team that I built. I will tell you, hiring somebody is much harder than firing somebody. Okay, that decision is easy. It's made for you to fire somebody. They are not living up to standards. Hiring somebody, you have to be in sync with the person that you're talking to, that you're going to work to. It's a difficult thing, but it's an art. It's something you have to craft over time. I will tell you this. When I went on my first interviews, I was a shotgun. I would just blurt out everything that was on my resume to the person, and the person's head would just blow back, right? I had to develop a skill set of talking to somebody, figuring out what's important to them before I could tell them what's important to me. Does that give you any clarity?
Thank you. Yes, it does. It does. It seems like it's a little bit of a navigation process, but I think finding common ground is what you're saying is pretty valuable in the interview process. Thank you.
Leanne, has anybody else typed a question yet?
Yes, I have 2 more questions.
Okay.
So, Rich, can you talk a little bit about the culture at each of your companies? Was there one that was the best or especially difficult?
I'll answer both of those. Yes, you're always going to run into a place that's difficult. Absolutely. I will tell you, Neuberger Berman was the best place that I worked. It was a partnership when I got there. When I left, it was Lehmanized because Lehman had taken it over. So that's part of the reason why I left. I liked the culture because it was focused on the employees. They were very good to the employees. I had a lot of growth opportunity there. I was very comfortable there. It was one of the longest stretches of my career was at Neuberger Berman. Morgan Stanley and Credit Suisse are what you would expect. They are big bureaucracies. They are a numbers game. They are very much, you are working for your job almost every single day. You have multiple managers, multiple people to report to, and you have to be on your game all the time. There's no hiding in these types of places. You need to know how to navigate those places and grow. And that, again, is the theme of communication. I spent so much time of my career managing up that I would have been a lot more effective if I was out on the road selling. But managing up covers your ass, if you will, and you have to do it. And it's important that you do both that and do your job, your day job.
Okay. Oh, okay. So this is a question from Nia Davis. How can the keys of success when communicating in person be applied when almost all communications are virtual regarding our current situation?
Yeah, it's a tough situation, absolutely. You know, I was mentoring a PACE student, and she was having a very difficult time getting an internship. She had a very difficult time communicating. One of her issues was she was a foreign student, so she had an accent. I spent a lot of time talking to her. I said, listen, you need to tell your story, but you need to tell your story in a shorter, succinct way. You have to be clear. You have to slow your tempo down. You have to just be a little more controlled in what you want to say. It's very difficult to communicate over a phone or in a Zoom call. It is a challenge that you are all facing. And I will tell you, it's a difficult environment. Again, it's about crafting your story. It's about engaging that individual. It's about reading that person if you can. Are they interested in you? How do I pull them back? Those are things that you learn over time. I mean, I've been on thousands of interviews. It's a tough spot that you're in right now.
Okay, next question from Priscilla. What is your opinion on the current state of the financial markets?
That's a great question. Personally, I think there is some serious issues that we're going to have to face relatively soon. I'm not too sure about the market at this point. Anytime you lever yourself, which is the U.S. government is levering itself with all the free money that we have out there, somebody has to pay the piper down the road. I mean, there are discussions about Social Security issues and things like that. Taxes are going to have to go up. So there's a lot of uncertainty in the market at this point. I'm not an economist. I'm just a retired guy. But I would say there is some uncertainty in the markets at this point.
Okay. Another one from Nia Davis. As a commuter running a student organization geared to this population, is there anything you would do differently in order to maximize your network and involvement according to opportunities and resources?
So, I mean, I built a pretty interesting network. You know, I have actually a question that I'm going to lay out to most of you here. I want you all to think about it. I can't see you, but how many of you went onto LinkedIn to look at my profile on LinkedIn, right? On LinkedIn, I have almost 500 people linked into me. Most of those are truly my network. Those were the people that I relied upon when I was working. How did I build those things? What did I do to that? You know, I met most of those people, and most of them are competitors of mine at conferences. And I would see them time and time again, and we became friendly. I'm going to go off on a little tangent story here about a network. In my business, it's a highly competitive business. There are 5,000 guys in blue suits and red ties like me calling on pension consultants. Just imagine their inbox on a daily basis of the amount of emails they get and correspondence from people like me every single day. They can't possibly read all that stuff. How do you stand out from those people? You build a rapport with them. How do you build a rapport? It takes time. It takes effort. I had an individual that was working at one of the very large consulting firms, a firm that had about $2.5 trillion in assets under management, which was a big fish for us to get. I wanted to get some products in front of them. I developed a relationship with them over 5 years. Really tangent story is, on 9/11, I was stuck with him out in California, and we drove back across the country. We bonded. He left that consulting firm. Okay, when somebody who works on the consulting side of the equation leaves, no one wants to talk to them on my side again. I kept in touch with him because I figured at one point he may go back to being a consultant. And sure enough, 2 years later, he was back at that same firm in a senior position, and he was my number one contact at that firm. These things happen. How do they happen? Sometimes you're just lucky, things do. But always keep people fresh in your Rolodex. Always make sure you're calling them. Always make sure you're touching base with them.
That was good. Did you have any mentors during your career, and was it beneficial?
Absolutely, I did. I will use Neuberger Berman again. This is the same guy that said, "You're going to work on my team." And he taught me everything there is to be about a salesman. He would yell at me if my shoes were not shined when I walked into his office. So me and this other guy on our team would make sure anytime the guy was in there shining his shoes, we walked into his office and he bought us a shoe shine. So he taught me how to act. He taught me how to sell. He taught me how to shut up and listen. He taught me all of those things that I just told all of you is what he taught me. So I was very fortunate that I was brought up by somebody who really knew what they were talking about.
As a person who had held positions in management, what were the key indicators that your management skills were effective or ineffective? What advice would you give to someone who wants to start their own consulting business?
First off, everything I ever did was perfect. So I never did anything wrong. So that's I won't even answer that part of the question. Being a manager is really, it's like being a parent at some point. Sometimes you get things right, sometimes you don't. More often than not, you get things right. I look back now on my career and the people that I influence and see the positions that they're in now, and I take a lot of pride in seeing their success. And I'm quite pleased to say that one guy that I brought from Neuberger to Credit Suisse is now global head of institutional asset sales at Credit Suisse. And I say, every time I talk to him, you owe me dinner, you owe me lunch, and every time we go out, he pays because I made his career. And he hates when I do that, but it's a true statement. So it is probably the most rewarding thing and the most frustrating thing is to be a manager. And I was a player coach. So being a player coach is I had responsibility to travel, and I traveled globally. So I would be out on the road selling, and then I'd have to come back and deal with running a team and running a department. You're only as good as the people that are working with you. I had a great team every time I developed and built a team. I had people that I could rely upon to get the job done. It is extremely difficult when you have a weak link on your team. You spend so much time trying to bring them up. It is a challenge almost every day. So there is no secret sauce in managing people. What I tell people is this: don't be two different people. That means don't be the home guy and don't be the work guy. People go to work and they think, well, I'm going to be a stickler for people showing up on time. I'm going to make sure that you do this. For me, when someone ever on my team wanted a vacation day, or wanted to leave early, they would come into my office and they'd start telling me a story. I said, listen, I don't care about what you have to do. You want the day off? Take the day off. You need to leave at 4 o'clock? Leave at 4 o'clock. Get your job done. Make sure that your work is being covered. And I don't care what you do. If you want to come in at 10 o'clock and leave at 11:30, that's fine with me, but I'm going to hold you accountable to having your job done. Be true to yourself when you manage people, and they will deliver for you.
Okay, 2 more questions. Did you have moments where you were stuck and didn't know how to move forward? How did you solve this?
I usually quit my job and got a new one. That's the short answer, no. Look, I'm a realist. That's the case. And did I work through some tough situations? Yes, I did work through some tough situations. But sometimes the better option is to find something else. So I did. I'm one of those people that I don't have a tough time starting over. That's just in my DNA. Some people, that's not the way to go. I'm not recommending either.
Okay, and last one, what is your preferred leadership style? How do you value being managed?
I personally like to be left alone. You tell me that what you want to have done, and I will execute that strategy for you, and I will do it to the best of my ability. I think when you hover over people, you kill creativity. You don't allow people to show you how good they are. And most people are very good at what they do. When I went into each one of these, when I went into Neuberger, when I went into Credit Suisse, when I went into Morgan Stanley, I was given a task to build out a team. And whenever you take somebody from outside of an organization and bring them in to lead, generally what happens is most people get fired or replaced. That is 90% of the time what happens. I did not believe that. What I looked for was an asset. I looked for the person that was working there for 5 or 6 years, that really didn't move anywhere, didn't have an opportunity to excel, but knew the organization. I would make that person my right-hand man. I would then develop that person in my image. And that has worked out quite well in my career with people. Give people a chance, and you will be surprised at how well they rise to the occasion.
That is all of the questions that I have in the chat.
I
Do
believe
any
Aaron
other
has a
students?
question.
Oh, perfect.
Thank you. A lot of people give advice about the benefits of having a mentor. As someone who hasn't had an internship opportunity yet, who doesn't have a full-time industry job yet, how do you go about finding a mentor to help take you through those steps?
Well, you have some mentors at Pace. You have industry experts at Pace as your professors. You have the ability to talk to these people every day, and people in different disciplines as well. I would start there. Getting that first job is difficult. Getting that first internship is tough. I didn't get a mentor until probably 6 or 7 years into my career. That's when I got one. And I was fortunate to get one, and he did a great job. At least I'll tell myself that. So.
Mark, yeah.
I'm also, Rich, you're a mentor through, there's a formal PACE mentoring program. You mentioned it earlier, and I wanted to make sure all of our students knew about that. If you go to pace.edu/mentoring, it'll bring you to a web page, and you can enroll in the PACE website. It's an alumni and student mentoring program. And I think we have, many hundreds, maybe even 1,000 people like Rich who are wanting to give some time back because they had a great PACE experience in education, and they want to give back to current students, undergraduate and graduate students. So I think that that's very important that all of you know about mentoring.
Thank you.
Okay. Well, I want to thank everybody for being here. Thanks to the students for showing up and for dressing so nicely. I'm sure you do this when you go to your classes every day, when you have classes on the ground. I wish. I really want to thank Mr. Pustorino for taking time out of his schedule to be with us today. It's really nice, a real pleasure for me to see him again. And I really appreciate you sharing your insights and your experiences with the students today. So thank you very much for being here. We really, really appreciate that.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
And thanks everybody for being here. Have a great afternoon, everybody. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, everybody.
Bye.